Good morning from California, from Northern California, and in particular Silicon Valley. It's going to be interesting to talk to you today about this subject of licensing. I'm gratified to see the number of people that we have on the webinar. As I look at the screen here, it looks like we'll max out again at 1,001, but the locations, I remember laughing a little bit with Cindy. I said, with this subject, I wonder if I'm going to have like 20 people on the webinar, or 30 or 50. And I'm glad to see that some of you are serious about what we're going to discuss. You know, I think this is not as juicy a subject as talking about recruiting or a number of other things we could discuss as leadership principles. But we are going to talk about something that's so important, and I think way too often, especially with how critical an area it is, it slips through the cracks a bit, and it just shouldn't be. Getting people licensed is always a battle, and yet we know what a big deal it is. And so let me proceed, and let's talk about your mindset. We're going to look at this from a number of different angles, and we're also going to give you practical solutions and a good checklist at the end as we look at it. You know, I can't resist but then show you, for those of you that are watching, this is the new Ferrari. I think it's called La Ferrari, catchy. And it's $1.5 million car, though I don't think you can find one for that. That's the MSRP. They're making 499 of them. Beautiful car. It's a superbly engineered machine. And I want you to think about all the engineering and the knowledge and the generations of engineers and people who study all the technologies as it can apply to an automobile and to a race car, designed from an aspect of it being exotic and beautiful, but also incredibly efficient and very dependable. And while I would never say never, but I can't anticipate I'd ever spend $1.5 million on a car. When you look at this, the analogy I'm going to make is WFG is a superbly engineered business machine. And to use the analogy further, this car, for all that's gone into it, and the decades and decades and decades of racing and all the lessons learned from that, and the advances in technology and metals and the understanding of aerodynamics, no matter how good you make the machine, it's wasted without a driver. It's useless without a key. I mean, and I don't think I'm being too obscure in the parallel that our machine is unbelievably effective. But if someone doesn't get licensed, right, they don't have a key. No driver. And so we need to take a real good look at our thinking about licensing. You know, it's interesting. We talk in the business about becoming a prospector, good at prospecting. We want to be good producers. We want to be great recruiters. We want to be strong closers. So we talk about this stuff. And every one of these is important. We do need to know how to prospect, produce, close, recruit, and the pieces that go into that. But today we're going to talk about another word, and just by the fact that it sounds a little weird, tells you a story that we don't talk about it enough, that we don't think about it enough. As leaders, we aren't teaching the team enough in this area to respect it the way it should be respected. So today we're going to talk about becoming a licenser. Now, you haven't heard that much, have you? Recruiter, closer, producer, prospector, but not a licenser. And yet, if you want to build, if you're going to be a builder, that is one of the critical talents or capacities that you're going to have to develop. You'll use some of the same tools that a closer does, or a recruiter does, or producer or prospector does, in terms of persuasiveness, of social skills, of focus, and of conviction. But I want to know that you have, and I'm going to try and do everything I can in the time we spend together here today, everything I can to help you increase your conviction about attention to licensing. And then how do you give it the right kind of attention, the right way? You know, what are the pieces of the puzzle? So let's talk about it now. I'm going to start selling this to you. It's such a critical step, getting a license. So let's just go through a simple little line of things here. If you don't have a license, you have no license, you're going to have no income. You're going to have no family's help. You're going to have no promotions. Functionally, you don't have no business. You don't have no dreams coming true, and no future with WFG. So that's all the no's that come with no license. No income, no family's help, no promotion, no business, no dreams coming true, no future. Wow. So, considering all of those things are true without a license, I think sometimes we procrastinate way too much individually on getting them sometimes, and as leaders we procrastinate the emphasis. Now, let's say from an aspect, I'm going to call this a flawed plan. Those of you who aren't watching this, I'm going to talk to you now about the wrong kind of thinking about how to solve a licensing issue. Let's say when we're done here today, you're fired up. You're going, you know what, I'm really going to double or triple the number of people that are getting licensed. And so now you go, how am I going to do that? Just wanting it isn't going to do it. Just making it, just wishing. We're going to talk about that in a second here. So let's talk about this. When I came to a few years ago, I met back in the home office had hired some folks to solve our licensing problem, and so I'm going to ask you a question. Are licensing issues solved by home office administration? Let me clear this up real quick. No. All right. So I went back there. They said, hey, we have this plan. We've spent a few $100,000 on gathering how to gather all this data, do all this software so we can pull all these numbers. And we do need the numbers. You need to be able to track performance. The old saying, performance measured, performance improves. But we've hired a full-time position. They're going to focus on it. And the home office plan was every base shop have a licensing coordinator. When they license somebody, they got $50 or whatever it was. And I remember when we went through it, I said, this is good tools, but it's all lower law. You can't manage a field issue from the home office. Field issues are managed by field leaders. Home office problems are managed by home office leaders. I said, so there's nothing you're going to think of, and there's no person you can appoint that everybody will listen to or pay attention to or get on a conference call with. They get on conference calls with their leaders. You go talk to the WSB, and who are they going to be listening to? They're going to listen to their leaders. They're going to listen to Swan Wen. They're not looking for answers to the issues in their businesses much to the home office. And so the home office is not in a position to solve this. They can facilitate it. They can do good things with the They can do lots of good things, and they can gather the data for us so we can manage our businesses. And we have the best support any field force has ever had in the history of our industry for that. But they can't solve this problem because it's not a home office problem. If it is a problem in your team, right, it's not a home office problem. It's your problem. Now, are licensing issues solved? Let's ask another question. Solved by a local assistant. Can you pay someone $15 an hour or $12 an hour or even, dare I say it, $20 an hour? You can hire your freaking attorney and pay him $350 an hour. And it's not going to solve the problem. Are licensing issues solved by a local assistant? No. Can they contribute? Yeah. Right? Now let me ask you another question. Are licensing issues solved by hoping it will get better? Let's try that one. Nope. Let's try another one. Are licensing issues solved by just talking about it? Nope. So we got 3 no's, right? They're not solved by the home office, not solved by you just having an assistant, you know, that pays a little bit more attention to it, though that can help because at least that's on site. Is going to be solved by hoping or talking? No and heck no. If it was that simple, you'd be licensing half your people. And you'd be bummed that you're only licensing half your recruits. But there are people out there in organizations on this phone call right now that if they recruit 100 people, they license 9. They license 7. They license 11. They license 13. Now, if they're licensed 7 and then they got to 13, they go, man, I'm killing it, almost doubled it. Look, that's better than nothing, but that's still terrible. You know, healthy, when a body is healthy, it's 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Isn't that right? So if you were 30 degrees, you'd be dead, right? You'd be frozen, right? And you say, wow, but now my body temperature is 45. Well, at least you're not frozen anymore, but you're still dead, right? So a bad number is still a bad number, and it's still hurting your business. And so let's talk about the issue of a low licensing percentage. Let me ask you 3 questions about this. Is this a mindset problem? Is this a leadership problem? Is this an operations problem? For most of us in the business, in the field, the answer is all of the above. One of the reasons we don't license more people in this organization is we got a mindset problem on the part of leadership and even the reps coming in, which is a leadership problem simultaneously. And a leader doesn't embrace the importance of them following this up, them really learning how to move people. Look, you learn how to do a BPM, or you learn how to give the presentation for IUL, or you learn how to do a follow-up interview and get somebody to fill out the AMA, right, or fill out an app in the field. You've got to understand this is a close, a long-term close, because you just can't close them once on it. You got to keep closing them. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the reality is our mindset has to be right. Our leaders have to be committed to it, and we have to have the operations to back it up. So let's talk about these things one at a time. Let's talk about mindset. Your goal, just so you have it clear in your head, every recruit gets licensed. That's your goal. Are you going to get every recruit licensed? Well, I guess if you get 1 this year, and you get that's how you do it, right? But if you're going to be recruiting, sometimes people won't let you get help them get licensed. They just won't do it. And then you'll get some that's all they'll do. We'll talk about that in a second too. But your goal is still every recruit gets licensed. You recruit somebody, we want them licensed. Not hard to figure out. We could go back to the no thing. No income, no future, no dreams, right? No business. So we know we got to get people licensed. We got to be passionate about that, just like we have to be passionate about what we're doing to help families. We have to be passionate about our opportunity. You got to be passionate about being licensed. You know, hey, I know it's not as sexy bringing in an app, sending it in, or having it electronically transmitted, and boom, you get a paycheck. That's fun. You get a recruit, it's on the Leaders Bulletin. I have advocated for a long time the WFG, they ought to do a licensing Leaders Bulletin. Every base shop ought to be measured by the number of people they got licensed, new licenses that month, and then have a running total of how many licenses they have in the base. Super base information ought to be there. Super team information ought to be there. I'm gonna go back at the company to see us move forward on this, because we're going to recruit 200,000 people this year. Man, does it fire me up. I mean, it almost turns me on to think about us getting 100,000 people licensed. Right now, if I'd settle for 50,000 of them licensed. Right now. There come a day where I won't settle for that. But if you'll pay attention to this, the things we're talking about right now, and your mindset is right, you say to yourself, every recruit I get, personally, every recruit I get in my base, every recruit I get in my super base, every recruiter getting a super team, my goal is they get licensed. Your responsibility, get every recruit licensed. Don't you see a parallel there? That's your goal, and it's your responsibility. It's one thing to set a goal. It's another thing to assume responsibility. Very different process, much more substantial, much greater. Anybody can set a goal, then you forget it, in one ear and out the other. Right? And we took, when I was in the base shop business, and all those years, I took responsibility. Cindy and I took responsibility for getting every recruit license. When we did a base shop again a few years ago, and I just wanted to get back in it, get a little bit of feel, kind of understand what people were feeling in this era and this season, we went out and recruited a couple hundred people, and we licensed 55% of that group. Man, I wish the mindset of our leaders was the same right now. Your vision should be to have and lead an army of licensed, productive people. I don't want them licensed and not producing, but we're not going to talk about that right now. We're going to talk about your licensing percentage, and you having a vision of an army of licensed people, productive people. So your objectives are, in this order, you get their AMA, you get them in the licensing process, and you get them productive. This is all happening at the same time. One of the mental challenges that people have in this business, and we've all experienced this if you've recruited any number of people, you'll get somebody and say, let's get out, let's get started, let's get people to the meeting, let's get in front of some folks, let's do some appointments. And they go, well, I want to get licensed first. And so you have that extreme. No, we didn't do both at the same time. No, I just want to get licensed, and then we'll go, Funny. Look, you do everything you can to massage that attitude, because they need to be get licensed and creating activity. But the reality is, that's not a real high percentage. But I've seen all kinds of people overreact to having a few of those, I don't know what you'd call engineering types in there. I can do one thing at a time. That's not even fair to engineers. There's so many engineers around here that are good at doing so many things, and I know hundreds of them. So I don't know what kind of personality it is. I actually have a couple of adjectives that I won't use on this webinar. If you're curious, you can call me, but I think you can figure out a couple. People who don't understand business and entrepreneurship and knowing you got to do more than one thing at once. But that's our challenge as leaders. It's not our challenge to get mad at them because they don't come in with all the right mindsets, right? What kind of miracle would that be? I didn't come in with all the right mindsets. I had all kinds of things where should I wait to get, I was asking all those same questions when I joined. To get their AMA, get them in a licensing process, get them productive. Your challenge and encouragement of these people, and I don't mean just once. I challenge them and encourage them at the end of the BPM. I do it then in the follow-up interview. I do it then if I'm in the home on the appointment for having them become a client. All of it is a continuing challenge and encouragement. I pick up the phone and I'm talking to them, and I'm keeping that link. I'm challenging them. I'm encouraging them. Because look, in a lot of states, there's the hours, and this stuff isn't that much fun, in some ways. Just like they can feel rejection when somebody stands them up at a meeting, or feel rejection when somebody doesn't buy. This one is not so much the issue of rejection or those emotions. It's more sometimes flat out just a little dull. If you're in a state that has pre-license requirement, California, it's either 32 or 52 hours, depending if you're getting the health license with it. Bottom line is, it's not delirious excitement. It's not watching playoff basketball. It's not watching the World Series. It's not watching an action-adventure movie. This is pure documentary, and you got to coach your people through it. So we'll talk a little bit more on that when we talk about the practical steps. But this is your mindset, right? I'm going to get every recruit licensed. That's my goal. That's my responsibility. I have a vision of leading an army of licensed, productive people, right? And I'm going to be clear that I've got to be ongoing, challenge and encourage our people constantly. That's my mindset in this area. Just like I got to do that in recruiting, I got to do it in inviting, I got to do it in first presentations, in closing, all of this, but you've got to add becoming a licensor to your mindset. I'm a licensor. We should hand out shirts that say that. Next thing, let's talk about leadership. You know, one of the things we could stand back and say, hey, some of these teams just aren't doing the job. You know, and there's a great saying here. It says, don't find fault, find a remedy. In other words, we're looking for solutions. We're not looking here to just complain or moan or groan, right? Because since I have experienced and done high percentages in a large organization, we drifted down through the years, you know, from 15 years ago, when this company used to average, spending an organization between 25 and 50% licensing. It became acceptable because the recruiting just exploded somehow, did not license as many people. That's just the wrong way to approach this. Because here's a couple of bottom lines. If you lose focus on recruiting, it drops. If you lose focus on production, it drops. Most of you have not lost focus on licensing. That sounds good, but it's not, because you never truly had a focus on it. And so that's a dilemma. And so you've got to put the focus on licensing that you do on recruiting and production. It's a 1, 2, 3. Recruit, license, produce. Right? You've got to have urgency with this. You know, we're not looking to get somebody licensed in 6 months. Now understand, part of the intensity that I developed when we started our own company with WMA is that we decided to market the IUL didn't exist. VUL was the best product in our opinion. But now you're going to have to get a life license and a securities license, 6 and 63. So you had 3 licenses you had to get through. We didn't have the option of goofing around. You know, I know a guy that took over 2 years to get licensed. But it was an amazing guy. And his name was Tam Lung. And it was unbelievable how that guy kept working, kept a good attitude, kept smiling, because he had to get a securities license, and you flunk it 3 times, and you got to wait 6 months. And he flunked it 3 more times and wait another 6 months. And what a mess. I think he made $250,000 his first year when he got licensed. I mean, because 20-some thousand the first month as soon as he got a license, because there was so much business as an organization that once we flipped the switch at the home office on his appointments and everything, and he could start overriding his team, it was unbelievable. Quite a guy. And so he would get my award for persistence in licensing, but I also now want to emphasize how much you've got to be urgent with people. You know that if you let too much time goes by, their life sets in, all the kind of mundane stuff that fills their world, and not so mundane stuff, their work, their family schedule, their hobbies, whatever it is, their spouse going, where's the money, right? And you've got to have urgency with these people, and you've got to create it in your organization. It's unbelievable when you let time goes by how that curve just drops off like a cliff. You let a few months go by, the percentages of licensing at that point is absurdly low. Low single digit. And so you've got to have urgency. You don't get them licensed early, odds are way too high, you're not going to get them licensed at all. And so you've got to sell out to licensing your people. That's the business we're in, along recruiting and production and developing leadership. We recruit people, we get them licensed, we get them productive, and we turn them into leader builders. That's our world. You take licensing out of there, the whole thing falls apart. You know, we had a picture earlier, but line of dominoes. You know, you've seen those demonstrations probably, where all of a sudden somebody's like fills a whole gymnasium with a domino display. And everybody's all excited to see the first one pushed. You know what's interesting? We have dominoes as it moves from recruiting, production, leadership, you know, building. But it's interesting, but if you remove a domino, if you don't recruit them, well, there's no one to license or get productive or turn into a leader. But if you remove licensing, everything breaks down after that. You can't miss one of these things. And I feel like we do pretty good focusing on recruiting and producing and building, right, and leadership development, but I don't think we do anywhere near the leadership job or the mindset job that we need to when it comes to licensing people. So, couple of prompts here. Don't make or accept excuses from people. Don't be intolerant or mean-spirited. But, man, you just got to move right through. Nope, you've got to get licensed. Look, I know you're busy. Let me tell you how to take these hours and move on through it. Because usually we're required to stay the computer running long after we finish looking at what there is to look at. And then you can do something else while the computer's going. Bottom line is you get through the hours, you're thorough, you get from it what you should get from it, but let's get it done. Legs to get it done, right? No license, no income. That's all you'd have to tell me. When I got that in my head, I went and got a license as fast as I could. The leader's attitude here makes all the difference. If you accept low percentages, I promise you, you're going to get them. And so here's my challenge for you. Don't accept low percentages. And I think anything below 25% is low. Don't accept it. There have been plenty of examples, and there are examples right now in this company of people who license above that and have done it for years. Look, you recruit tons of people, you've got that challenge in your hands because that means that many more people to communicate with. A guy who's got 5,000 acres, right, of corn has more work to do and paying attention to it than someone who has 100 acres. Right? But now you have help by the time you get to 5,000, right? You have all kinds of help, but they have got with you to see your attitude. They got to develop the same attitude. They got to have the same philosophy of not making or accepting excuses and not accepting low percentages in licensing. Don't accept low percentages. Now let's shift gears and talk about operations. This is day to day to day to day to day to day. This has to be a consistent pattern, just like you've got to have a system and running a machine. And so we're going to have 2 slides talking about this. This is moving to clarify this process. Now, each state has its own little issues of how many hours you've got. You've got a few states that don't require pre-licensing hours. Man, you know what's crazy? There's states that don't, California's either 32 or 52, like I said. There's states that don't have any hours. And we got all kinds of teams in California that license more people than people in a state without pre-license hours. I didn't know how that's possible. Which just goes to show that if your mindset's not right, these so-called obstacles to licensing aren't the difference. Now we're back to what? Mindset and leadership. Let's talk about operations, though, now. Commit to developing a system. You've got to have a pattern. It's got to be clear in your mind. It's got to be clear in your administrative staff. It's got to be clear in every one of your leaders. And very early on, it becomes clear in every new recruit's mind. Hey, we have a system for recruiting. We have a system for learning to sell. We have a system for licensing people. I believe it starts in the introduction to the business. I've never hid from talking about licensing. I've never hid from talking about the costs, letting them know that the costs will be spread out over time, but you want to get in and licensed and creating activity. If you're busy, you've got to manage your time better. You got to make this happen. If you're in a pre-license hours requirement state, then you got to teach them how to use evening, right? Challenge them to take a couple of days off and knock it out. These kinds of things are what leaders do that have passion and conviction about their business, about their opportunity, and about the need for licensing. So it starts in the intro to the business. It continues in the follow-up interview, because I would always map out a game plan. I would always talk to the new person about, you want to get licensed, you want to fill the pipeline with people joining your team, and they're getting licensed at the same time. You come out the pipeline licensed. Right after that, someone else comes out of the pipeline, another one comes out of the pipeline, another one comes out of the pipeline. And so we're emphasizing, of course, recruiting, but we are emphasizing recruiting and licensing. Like I said before, I've said in previous webinars, I wish that was one word, right? That you understood it ought to be one word. In other words, licensing is to a new recruit what a downswing and a follow-through is to a golf swing. The backswing in golf is like an AMA. I mean, it's great, it's important, but it's not going to do you much good no matter how good your backswing is if you don't have a downswing. Right? I mean, that's where you hit the ball. It's kind of absurd. I'm picturing people all over a golf course. They're standing on a driving range just doing backswings. It'd be easier on the facility. You wouldn't need balls, and you wouldn't have to pick them up. Right? Of course, I have good news. You would never hit a bad shot either. You just wouldn't be doing anything. That's what not getting a license is like. No downswing, no contact, no opportunity. You see how clear my mindset is on this. I mean, these are analogies I've used around people when I'm convincing them to get licensed for a long time. So it continues in the follow-up interview. It continues, you get the AMA, and you want to do and pre-license training. Again, if your state requires that, I want you doing both. I still want you bringing people to the meeting. I still want us to go out on some appointments. But we do both. My philosophy, this is just the way we did it. Right? You may have a leadership philosophy that's different, but you also got to analyze what are we going to do? If not this, what are you going to do to get your licensing percentages up above 25%? And so we signed up AMA and we used test teachers, and we signed them up in test teachers at the same time. So AMA, right to licensing, and they're starting their hours. Meanwhile, we're working with them on a prospect list and getting them started in contact and bringing people to the meeting and getting out in the field. That's our business. I'm turning them into an entrepreneur. They don't have the luxury of being an entrepreneur as a business owner of being just one-dimensional. Requires you to work on a couple of things at a time. We're not going to ask you to work at 50 things at a time. We're going to ask you to do about 3. Right? We're going to want you to get your hours out of the way. We're going to go into the field and see some people about what we do financially, and we're going to have you bring some people to a meeting. And so this is the process, right, that we're going to be expecting and that we're going to be communicating. One process, one. And so you be very clear on it in your organization. You know, I was talking to a major leader, won't use his name, and his recruiting percentages have started to increase. But now they've dropped back a little bit again. Why? He lost his focus on it. Got excited about it for a little while, then turned his attention to, promotions and income and recognition, and then his recruiting production numbers, because he had a good team. But if he were to get above 25 and stay there because he got right to 25 and then drop back, if you were to go to 30 or 35%, let's say you're recruiting 10% right now. If you didn't recruit another person, but you started licensing 35% of your people, you understand? Basically, that is probably going to mean you're going to increase everything, production and income by 3.5 times. If you're making 100,000, you should be doing 350. If you're making 250, understand you're making $1 million. And so that's how big a deal this is. Now, in order to make this work, and this is part of your understanding in your checklist, right, is you got to have constant communication and encouragement to people. Now, I was just talking about that. I talk about challenge and communicate. So you're communicating, that's the first thing, right? And once again, you got to help them fight distraction and boredom. You got to work with them individually. And again, this is a leadership responsibility. And that communication needs to be personal, in person, by the phone, direct. You just can't blast out some texts and emails. Man, don't launch me on that sermon again. It's amazing how many of you think that you can effectively lead people with such shallow tools. They got to feel your passion. They got to feel your energy. They got to feel your intensity. They got to feel your commitment. They got to feel your encouragement. They got to feel that challenge. That's not something that's done indirectly. It's done individually and personally. look, people come in, look, part of my job in leadership, right, is constantly help people fight the distractions that take them off the main things they got to be zeroed in on. We love to get distracted from our personal recruiting. My job, one of my jobs as a leader is to help you get undistracted about your personal recruiting and point out to you what are the consequences if you don't do it. All right? But in this one, most of this business is not boring. Yeah, but pre-license hours are, and so you got to help them fight through that. Hey, we're just going to have a few hours of boredom here, maybe to have a lifetime of exhilaration. Well, I think that's a pretty good trade. But we have to help them get over this little hump that they got to face in the beginning. I hope you wrote that one down. A few hours of boredom to maybe have a lifetime of exhilaration. Wow. Wow. Anyhow, a lot of things I want to talk to you about there, and I'm not going to. Let's go ahead with operations, continuing to look at how to put together your licensing machine. All staff, all reps, all leaders talk licensing. Just like all staff, all reps, all leaders talk recruiting. All staff, all reps, all leaders talk production, presenting and closing. All staff, all reps, all leaders talk about next promotion. Within those things, I think that was 5, we got to have licensing constantly being discussed. And depending where they are in the business, like if I got an already licensed person, well, I'm talking about recruiting, I'm talking about production, I'm talking about his or her next promotion. But not licensed yet, I'm starting with this one. Where do you stand? How many hours you've done? A lot of these companies have systems you can track people's hours. And so, in this company, there are a lot of people that follow what is called the system flow, right? It's a great system for building your business, right? I'm going to talk to you about the license flow. So you have a pre-license requirement. Then you get that out of the way. You prep for the test. You take the exam. Dare we leave out this critical step? You pass it. All right, that's an important thing. You're going to receive a license. Then you do the appointment process, fee for that. You simultaneously turn your credit card number, right, for your E&O. You're going to start making sales, and you're going to get paid. That's the license flow. Knock out your pre-license requirement, prep for the test, take the exam, pass it, get your license, get appointed, put in the credit card, and leaders, you got to require that of people for the E&O. They make a sale, they get paid, you got someone in the business. You've got to fight this fight. This is a battle you've got to win more often than you do. If you take this checklist, I'd have every recruit, in somewhere in my system where I pulled up something online on my computer. There's Rich Thawley. All right, he's got his pre-license requirement out of the way, his test prep. I don't think he's taking his exam. When is the exam? Did he set his exam? I got to go find you. I got to call Rich and find out. Yeah, I've got it set for next Tuesday. Great. Knock that thing out. I'm going to say a prayer for you. Right? Now we're communicating. Saturday, you studying? Yeah. And then, then I hopefully get a call from good old Rich, and he said, man, I passed it. Right? And that's good news. If not, call them. Because if they're not calling you, it's probably because they may not have passed it. Right? And what do they need? Encouragement. They need to be challenged again. Hang in there. Let's go back to step 2. Let's take that test prep again. Right? And then let's reschedule the exam. You haven't rescheduled yet? This has got to be led. This is your responsibility. Ever recruit licensed. That's your goal. Right? Then we receive the license, appointment process, all this stuff. Transform your business. Transform it. Take this license flow, monitor it with every person you've got. Not just all you, unless it's just you and 2 people. You've got to have your whole team. Now, the staff can help you monitor some of this stuff, but they can't motivate. They're not challenging. They can encourage and be nice. Cindy was wonderful at it. wonderful at it, but she was in the business with me. She is a leader, right? She's a field leader and had wonderful personal relationships, great connections with the team, right? But most of your staff doesn't have that, right? You're paying them some amount, enough to keep them. And the bottom line is they need to hear from their field leader. They didn't join because of anyone on your staff. They joined because of your leadership, because of the vision they saw in the meeting, in the office, in the interview. And so that's why the home office can't do it. That's why you just can't appoint a licensing coordinator and, boy, they just go tear it up. And if they were that awesome, they'd be building their own team. So, I mean, because they're great at getting people licensed. They'd be good at recruiting and good at selling and all the rest of the things. So now, let's take a look at our action items. Let's kind of distill this down. This is the last slide. First, to all of you that are on this call and participating in this webinar right now that are not licensed, get licensed. Come on, you can do it, right? We're looking for you. We want you as part of the licensed team. I want to see us drive this company to 100,000 licenses over the next 12 months. Let's get rolling. We're in the 40,000. We're 200,000. We got 40-some thousand licensed, and that's all the ones we've licensed with last year's recruits and the year before and the year before. And so we need to do better at getting them licensed, getting them a paycheck. You can't get them a paycheck with their name on it, right? Without a license. They work for you as staff. They can mow your lawn. They get a paycheck that way. But we've got to do this job. Team leaders. Action items. 1, get your head in the licensing game. All right? All you unlicensed people, get licensed. Did you forget I said that? Go get licensed. Back to team leaders. Get your head in the licensing game. Determine right now, what is your current licensing percentage in your organization? Establish your team goal at somewhere between 25 and 50% of your recruits getting licensed. Every recruit has a licensing checklist. I just went over that on the page before, how that process goes. Everyone. And you're monitoring where they stand. Now, you can have a staff person give you reports. So-and-so hasn't done, right, this. I look at test teachers. They've only done 12 hours. And they feed the leaders that information. That's what staff does. It's your job then to lead out, to inspire and challenge and encourage them. Every recruit has a goal date for licensing. I mean, that should be coming right out of the interview, the follow-up interview. They have a date for when they're going to get licensed. And you have that on their licensing checklist. You should probably have that checklist with you when you do an interview and show it to them, because that's the process. The license flow, right? And then you put on that thing their date. Enter that in under their name as a new recruit. Every upline personally encourages licensing. Everyone above you and all you leaders, everybody beneath you, you need to personally encourage the licensing process. You help manage their pre-license hours. But to go back to the one I just said, let's take it from another perspective. You're an associate. You just recruited somebody. You have a senior associate. You have an MD. You have an SMD above you. The SMD, the MD, the SA, and you all ought to be calling and encouraging your new recruit, all right, to get licensed, to help make it happen. You help them manage that. I think you know what I'm saying when I'm talking about that. You manage those pre-license hours, make sure it gets done. And I want you to know that all progress needs to be recognized. You know, here's Trevor, my son-in-law, and he got, 22 hours done with all the other things with children and his full-time job. Now he's got 22 hours out of the way of his pre-license requirement. Give Trevor a hand. Great effort. That's the kind of effort I want to see. And you hold that stuff up. People want recognition. They want that kind of acknowledgement of their effort. Helps them go back in. Now what does Trevor want to do? He wants to go in and finish it, so I recognize that next week. All right? It builds on itself. I got 3 words for you. Step it up. Step it up. So to review that list again, get your head in the licensing game. Determine your current licensing percentage. Establish your team goal, at least somewhere between 25 and 50%. Every recruit has a licensing checklist. Every recruit has a goal date for licensing. Everybody personally encourages the new recruit that's above them. You help them manage their pre-license hours, and you make sure all progress is recognized. Step it up. We can do so much better than we are. And I love our company. I love the things we got going on. I love our growth. I love that our recruiting's up 60%. You know, I love that I believe our production is headed toward 40% up. It's 30-something right now. I want to keep that going. But you know one surefire way? License people, right? And good things happen. It makes them feel like they got a profession, right? They're in the game. I remember the before and after feeling before I was licensed and after I was licensed. You know what? My recruiter, right, wasn't even an SA yet. My recruiter helped me study for the exam. He had sample questions and met with me and helped me study for it. You know, now they're good operations for doing that. Back then, there wasn't as much, right? Cindy even taught the licensing class for a good while, prepping our people, because we were all in on licensing. And then my friend who recruited me, Gordon, drove me to San Francisco to the test center, and I was studying the questions while he drove, and we were talking about it. No, I think I drove, and he was asking me questions. That's what it was, right? So I was answering. Then he, right, got in the driver's seat. I went in and took the test, corrected it on the spot. I had passed. He was there to congratulate me right when I came out of the building, and we drove back, and I was jacked. It was the beginning of a new life for Cindy and I. But think of that commitment. This guy was a teacher, but he made time to make that happen, to study with me, and then took some time off and drove me up there to get me licensed. So that, he had good instincts that way. And that was a great thing. And I followed that tradition. I remember helping my personal recruits and going through questions with them and all that stuff coming up. We've got much stronger support for licensing, but a lower percentage, which absolutely proves that it's not support, not class, not online stuff that makes a difference. It's leadership and the right mindset. So, there we go. I'm done with my sermon. We're done early on this one. I like it. All right, let's look at next month. July, the month before the convention. I want you to know I love you guys so much. I'm going to do a webinar on my birthday, which is July 8th, which is the next webinar. And you're my birthday present. We're going to talk about supercharging your convention experience. We always need a reminder. Leaders, you need to push some people to be on this one and to make sure a part of it. And I wish I could convince the company. I think the company said, Trevor's just telling me here, I think the company said they're going to increase it because we blew it up again today. And so I'm excited to talk to you from a leadership standpoint, how to supercharge your convention experience, how to supercharge your convention experience for your team, and how individually what you got to do to have a great convention experience. We're going to look at it from a number of perspectives, right? And one of the things, and he just said to me across the table from me here, get your partner there. If I could pick one thing to supercharge your convention experience, is that you'd have your sweetheart to share it with. Now, if you don't have a sweetheart, you have, what's today? The 10th? You have 29 days to get a sweetheart. Choose wisely. Anyway, I appreciate you, and I'm grateful that we were able to talk about something as important as licensing, because it just is going to mean so much to your team, the success of the families who become part of your organization, and, of course, your success for you and your family if you do a better job and you get to the point where you start doing a great job at licensing and moving your people. All right. I'm looking forward to spending a little bit of my birthday with you next month. And thank you very much. You don't have to send me any gifts, but if you do, the minimum expenditure is $10,000. So, I mean, it's got to be at least 10 grand. Cash is an acceptable gift, right? So, it's so if you don't spend that, just the thought that counts. Yeah. Hey, you know what? Cindy just nailed it. Here's the present I want. Get a license. Here's another present I want. Leaders, get 25 to 50% of your people licensed. That's the only birthday present I want. That'd be the best. All right, everybody. Thanks for being in business with us. Love and appreciate you. Talk to you next month.